and I went down the river to hunt for a way to cross. And I was going across a log with my pack on. This is a 30-kilogram pack as well, going across this log above some water, and just a little bit of imbalance, and I got flipped over, and I got flipped into the water and slammed down into the water face down with this pack on me, and the pack had gone up higher, so I was pinned in the water, and I had to use all my strength to get up again. And then I tried to go across the river as well at one point. It was only 5 meters across at this point, but of course all that water was being concentrated into a smaller area, and I started to go across, and I felt it really dragging on my knees the river, and just about ripping my legs off. And I was only another 2 meters away from the edge, the other side, the other bank, but it was just too powerful, and I wasn't going to take that risk. So I went back and set up my tent again, and then continued to wait while I took photos around there and thought about other ways to possibly cross and stuff. And then the next morning as well, it hailed, so it was that cold. It was cold enough to snow. So there was hail all over my tent one morning. And then still looking at ways to cross, but it was good because I was fine. I was totally fine in my tent, warm, had all my food and everything. I still liked the muesli bars. There was nothing wrong with them. And it's interesting as well because in these circumstances, I always want to go. I always want to go. I never wait. I never wait for things. But I waited for 6 days for this. And then finally, there was a little gap in the weather. And I was talking to myself saying, do I go, do I go, do I go? And I decided to go because I was taking my measurements of the water, and the water had slowed down. It had dropped by those 2 meters as well. It was still quite high. Couldn't hear any rocks getting blasted down the river because it was too slow at that stage. And then I found a point where it was a little bit deeper, so hopefully a bit slower running and less chance of the rocks being dragged down. And this was after 6 days as well. So I jumped in, and it was freezing up to my chest. Freezing water, so you get that shock as well. But I had this image of me just bolting across, but you can't because you've got this pack on, 30-kilogram pack, and I had 2 walking sticks as well that I made. Just got some sticks off the ground just to maintain my balance, and I could feel my feet on those rocks on the bottom, the round rocks, because they've all been rounded just by the forces of the current, the water. And I let my feet slide into position each time. And with the weight of the pack, it actually helped with that too, because I would get in a position and then my foot would actually stay there. And then I got halfway across, more than halfway, and I knew I was going to make it because the current dropped a little bit, the power of the current dropped a little bit, and then I gave out a yell and I made it to the other side, this white bank of crushed rocks, and I was in this kingdom. It felt like I'd entered the kingdom of the Southwest. I'd been given permission, finally, to enter this place, this magical world. And then so I was walking again then, because I knew that was the biggest river in that area, so I could continue to walk at least for a while. And so I walked across these plains, looking out and thinking, I can't believe this exists, because I'd already been out there. I'd already been starting to connect with nature out there. And you start to become, like they say, you become one with nature. But that's what happens. When you're out there long enough, you start to see things differently as well. You start to connect. You start to see how the weather's changing and stuff. And you're walking through the land. But it didn't feel like I was walking through the land. It felt like I was looking from above as well. It felt like I was a part of the land, and it felt like time had stopped. That this was a place that hadn't changed. It had changed in millions of years, but it felt like timeless out there. And the indigenous population who used to live down there, I felt their presence as well. I was walking along and I felt it strongly. This is just on the track. I felt something, and I went off the track and I found a quarry for stone tools and probably for spearheads and things, but I found still stone tools sitting there after they'd been quarried. So I don't know how old they could have been. They could have been a couple of 100 years old, or even older, who knows. But then I left everything as it was. I didn't touch anything. I went back onto the track, and then I looked back and saw that it was a perfect place to hunt kangaroos or other animals, because you could funnel them into this place, and then I imagined them hunting down there and living down there. Anyway, I continued along, and then through the night as well, walked into the night and saw a storm coming in, but I wasn't worried because I had warm clothes. I had shorts on and no gloves because my hands were used to the cold already. So I just continued, but my torso was really warm thanks to this jacket, and then the Gore-Tex jacket over the top. So it was fine in the rain. I didn't feel any of the wind or anything, and I had a thermal. The key was to have a thermal as well on the innermost layer, and that's what really keeps you warm, and the others just protect you as well. So I continued to walk, and then looking for my next campsite, and I walked up a hill and just slipped. I flipped almost straight over, and then I dented my aluminium water bottle as well when that happened. But continued along, then found a campsite, camped there, and then woke up early the next day and kept on going and repeated this process. And there were times when I was just drenched for ages. One night I just had to set up a camp on top of a hill in a lightning storm. There was lightning blasting down and stuff, and I had no choice but to. It was an open hill, and it was a prime place to get struck by lightning. But I set up the tent and tried to get a bit of sleep and ignore the thunder and the lightning, and I survived the night and then kept on going. And the whole time I just couldn't believe that this world existed, this beautiful world of wilderness and rivers and the floods as well, because I love water and stuff, and just to see all these waterfalls and the flooding. And of course I wanted to explore more, but I had to keep on going a bit as well, because I could see amazing waterfalls off in the distance coming down off the mountains, but I couldn't go there because it would be a whole separate trip. And where I was back at Crossing River, on the other side of that mountain is where my father died of a heart attack. So I was looking out at that as well, and then thinking that I'm here now and continuing this journey. So I continued on, and then I was heading towards the coast, and I got to Spring River, and it's this again another river that a lot of other rivers feed into it. And I got there, and there's supposed to be a bridge across there, and multiple times I got a little bit lost as well, so I had to go in and then out, and I was getting bitten by leeches as well. And in the end I would come out with about 100 leech bites, and my legs would swell up for a while as well. Not too much, but I mean that was just the way it goes. But I also had the water as well, which I thought I could just live off this water. It was so beautiful. It's the purest water in the world, and the purest air as well down there as well, because you have Tasmania, and the next stop is Antarctica, so you have nothing down there, no contaminants really coming down there, and it was amazing for that as well. And anyway, there was supposed to be a new bridge going across the Spring River, and I got there and it was flooded on one side, this steel bridge. So just flooded on one side, and then I started to walk across the bridge, and then the other side just black water, and it was even higher on the other side. And so I just had to walk into the water, and that immediately went close to up to my chest. I didn't even know where the path was. I couldn't see anything. There's just eucalyptus trees, and then there was a pink ribbon that I could see, so I presumed that was the path, so I tracked towards that. But this is not even wading, I mean higher than wading, up to my chest pretty much, water, and feeling the ground as well, and just wondering where to go. And at one point I got on top of a log just to try and see where to go, and the log was still submerged as well, but I thought at any point, I could get trapped under a log, or if it gets too deep then I could drown as well. And when I was going along what was supposed to be the track, I presume it was moving as if the river, it was a part of the river, because the river just flooded right up there, and I was in moving water and trying to go along, but trying not to enter the actual river either. And I ended up spending 2 hours in there going through this water, and sometimes it would go over my depth, and I found out the pack floated as well, because I'd float for a few seconds, and just luckily I managed to make my way out thanks to those pink ribbons that someone had put up to mark the track, because if they weren't there, then I think that would have been the end. And I got out of there after 2 hours, and it was pointless to have waterproof shoes. It didn't matter, you know, the water was just going to come over the top anyway. But it was so great to get out of there as well, to finally get to dry ground, dry solid ground. So pulled out of where the river was and started to walk again, totally soaked, but I didn't care. I'm used to that. And crossing more rivers, I would end up crossing about 70 rivers, I think, that were, you know, some had formed and some were there all the time. But just at that point as well, a little bit further on, about an hour after the river there was this smaller river. It was only probably 4 meters across, but it was blasting down with water, absolutely blasting down. And I had to cross that. Like, I had no choice. I wasn't going to wait to cross that, but I almost got swept away. And luckily there was a tree there. I saw the tree already. I was planning to grab it, and grabbed the tree and just wrenched myself onto the other side as the river was trying to take me away. It almost took me. Anyway, I continued through these beautiful landscapes of mossy forests and stuff, and one night I spent the night in a mossy forest, and there was actually a little bit of silence there, and I went down to get some water. When I got there, down to this river and got some water, and then when I went to leave the next day, it had rained in the night again, and it was totally flooded again, and I had to find a way across that river. I should have really continued a bit further, but luckily there was a log that went across there, and I walked across the log, and I fell in at that stage, and I was saying to myself, oh no, I can't get wet, because it was soaking my polar fleece as well.